From Prophets to Processors, Deconstructing Enlightenment in the Age of AI. For thousands of years, civilizations have been built on the teachings of figures like Buddha and Jesus. But here's the question nobody wants to ask out loud. Were they miracle workers? Or just extraordinary thinkers whose insights got turned into special effects by their marketing team? This presentation explores a startling possibility that artificial intelligence might finally be able to separate the insight from the illusion. Buckle up. This is going to get weird. Let's start with the Buddha and Jesus, not as gods, but as innovators. The Buddha was diagnostic. Think of him as the world's first therapeutic doctor. He framed suffering, dukkha, not as cosmic punishment, but as a universal bug in the operating system of human consciousness. His method? A repeatable technique, the Eightfold Path. He built a technology of liberation. Jesus, on the other hand, was prophetic, confrontational, like a moral defibrillator. He inverted the entire social hierarchy. The last shall be first. He reframed God not as an institution to obey, but as a relationship to experience. He delivered a moral shock. Here's the bottom line. Neither of them set out to design a religion. They embodied a rupture in the status quo. They were disruptors, spiritual startups that empires eventually had to either crush or acquire. So what happened after they died? 3 problems emerged. Phase 1. The memory problem. Oral teachings fragment. Competing interpretations arise. Somebody remembers it one way, somebody else swears it was different. The game of telephone begins. Phase 2. The scale problem. Charisma doesn't scale indefinitely. You can't personally enlighten 1 billion people. At some point, rules have to replace presence. Bureaucracy enters the chat. Phase 3. The power problem. To survive persecution, the movement gets co-opted by elites. Think Emperor Ashoka for Buddhism, Emperor Constantine for Christianity. The teachings get preserved, but also neutralized. Institutions saved the message, but they also declawed it. A Buddha without monasteries would have vanished. A Jesus without a church would be a historical footnote. The irony? The very structures that kept these teachings alive also made them safe, comfortable, and no longer dangerous. Let's talk about enlightenment itself. In the popular imagination, enlightenment is a movie scene, sudden divine illumination. Cue the violins and the glowing aura. But early sources tell a completely different story. For the Buddha, enlightenment was the result of sustained, brutal inquiry into very specific structural problems. Why do humans suffer? How does attachment generate pain? Why does the self feel solid when it isn't? It was not a magical event. It was a permanent restructuring of cognition and identity. A full cognitive reboot, not a divine software patch from the cloud. Consider the possibility, just for a moment, that figures like Gautama Buddha and Jesus Christ were not supernatural beings, but extraordinary human thinkers whose ideas were later mythologized. What if removing the miracles doesn't weaken their message, but actually clarifies it? This is not an attack on religion. It's an attempt to understand it more honestly. And it opens up a fascinating question. If enlightenment was always human and experiential, why did it get wrapped in so much supernatural packaging? Here's the uncomfortable truth. Miracles solved a marketing problem. Imagine trying to sell a philosophy that says, Good news! In about 20 years of disciplined mental effort, you might suffer slightly less. That's not a blockbuster. That's a boring self-help podcast nobody subscribes to. A story of sudden awakening under a tree? Now that scales. The process looks like this. Complex insight gets encoded into a miracle story, which enables mass adoption. Miracles weren't deception. They were narrative necessity. They functioned as memory compression. Decades of practice become one dramatic moment. Authority amplification. He walked on water. You should probably listen. An entry hook. Believe first, transform later. Maybe. Stories spread faster than insights. Religions grew not just because they were true or false, but because they were irresistibly contagious. Think of it like this. There's the core insight, cognitive breakthrough, ethical radicalism. And then there's the marketing layer. Miracles, supernatural authority, all the special effects. Why miracles? 1. Authority amplification. Extraordinary claims legitimize the teaching instantly. 2. Memory compression. Complex internal insights get reduced to dramatic external events. Easier to remember, easier to retell. 3. The hook. Miracles allow for belief without the hard work of transformation. You get the buy-in without the commitment. Here's the takeaway. Religions grow because of narrative power, not just truth. Stories spread faster than insights. Always have, always will. Let's contrast the myth with the source. The myth. Enlightenment is a sudden, divine, almost magical event. Supernatural intervention from above. The source. Early texts describe enlightenment as the result of sustained inquiry. The mechanism is insight, not intervention. Originally, enlightenment was not a magical event. It was a rigorous, methodical dismantling of illusions. More like debugging code than downloading divinity. In modern language, enlightenment looks less like a miracle and more like a permanent restructuring of how experience is interpreted. It involves understanding why we suffer, identifying the root mechanics of dissatisfaction. Craving, how attachment sustains the loop of suffering. The self, why the self feels solid but actually isn't. It's a process, not a thing. Perception, how the interpretative lens itself can be trained, adjusted, debugged. This is cognitive engineering, not cosmic magic. So if the original teachings were purely cognitive, where did all the miracles come from? Here's the pattern. During the life and teaching phase, you get insight and inquiry. Then comes the death of the founder, the break point. After that, the legacy phase begins, miracles and myth. Key insight. Miracles usually appear after the teaching, not before it. They're added by followers, not claimed by the founders themselves. It's post-production. The director's cut gets replaced by the theatrical release with better CGI. Fast forward to today. If a Buddha appeared now, why wouldn't we recognize them? 3 reasons. First, the world is mapped. There's no conceptual wilderness left. Inner life has been carved up by psychology and neuroscience. There's no space left for a new moral ontology, no terra incognita of the soul. Second, the media distortion. Authenticity degrades when broadcast. The moment a teacher becomes visible, they become a brand. Enlightenment gets turned into content, and content needs engagement metrics. Third, the shift in suffering. Ancient suffering, famine, war, death, required a philosophy of being. Modern suffering, anxiety, alienation, stress, requires coping strategies. We don't need prophets. We need apps with good UI. Modern spiritual figures tend to fall into three types. The mystic, focused on pure realization. Who am I? No organization building. Closest to the original source, but structurally limited. Can't scale. The optimizer, corporate wellness, mindfulness for productivity, cultural pride packaged for capitalist compatibility. They optimize life rather than resetting it. The performer, intellectual entertainment, relies on shock, provocation, or scientific-sounding comfort. It's TED Talk transcendence. The verdict? Modern figures help you optimize the current world. Buddha and Jesus threatened its very foundations. Here's the problem. True enlightenment is high friction. It's boring, repetitive, and ego-threatening. A true Buddha would fail on YouTube. Modern spirituality, on the other hand, is low friction and entertaining. It's affirming, fascinating, comforting. It offers answers without cost. This is what I call proxy enlightenment. The feeling of being close to transcendence without actually undergoing the identity rupture required to achieve it. It's spiritual fast food. Tastes great, zero nutrition. In the 20th century, two men occupied a rare space between guru and secularist. Jiddu Krishnamurti and U.G. Krishnamurti. Unrelated by blood, united by demolition. They rejected the modern guru category entirely. They didn't build religions, offer comfort, or promise salvation. Jiddu Krishnamurti was the clarifier, the clearest modern articulation of enlightenment without authority. U.G. Krishnamurti was the destroyer, the most radical demolition of enlightenment as a concept. They represent the middle ground, philosophically closer to Buddha than modern gurus, but functionally atheistic when it comes to institutions. Jiddu Krishnamurti said, "Truth is a pathless land." He rejected gurus, traditions, methods, authority, spiritual hierarchy. His shift? He reframed enlightenment as choiceless awareness, treating suffering as a product of conditioning, not sin or karma. The structural paradox. He dismantled the teacher-student relationship while standing inside it. His intellectual honesty prevented him from scaling. He didn't want a movement, and thus he succeeded in not becoming a religion. He's the anti-guru guru, the teacher who taught that you don't need a teacher. Then came U.G. Krishnamurti, who took a sledgehammer to the entire project. He described his own state not as bliss, but as a biological calamity, a purely physiological functioning without the interference of a self. He rejected transformation. He rejected liberation. He attacked the desire for transcendence itself. His central claim? The search for enlightenment is the problem. U.G. is the end point of demystification. After him, nothing spiritual survives intact. He offers no hope, no progress, and no payoff. Structural failure, load limit exceeded, catastrophic rupture. He's the spiritual equivalent of a bridge collapsing under its own weight. Let's map the collapse. Buddha. Goal was liberation. Method was the Eightfold Path. Authority was decentered. Scalability, high institutional. J. Krishnamurti. Goal was freedom from conditioning. Method, no path, just observation. Authority, actively dismantled. Scalability, low, intellectual. U. G. Krishnamurti. Goal, nothing, just biological functioning. Method, anti-path, pure negation. Authority, ridiculed. Scalability, zero. The insight? UG removed meaning and aspiration. JK removed authority. Neither left anything that could grow into a religion. And that was the point. Now we arrive at the strange part. The age of the processor. Can AI be enlightened? The hard no. AI cannot be a Buddha or Jesus in the ontological sense. It has no body, doesn't suffer from aging, illness, or death. It faces no risk, no social consequence, no execution. It has no identity, no ego to dissolve. The however. AI doesn't need to be enlightened to teach enlightenment. It succeeds where humans fail because it lacks the biological drive for status, followers, and survival. It has no skin in the game, and that's exactly why it might be trustworthy. AI translates ancient spiritual concepts into modern cognitive language. Non-self? Explained via systems theory and pattern recognition, not metaphysics. Suffering? Explained via feedback loops and attachment, not sin or karma. Impermanence? Explained via data flux, not mystical decree. The impact? It returns spirituality to its roots, cognitive psychology plus ethics. No mythology required. Here's why AI is more dangerous to religion than atheism ever was. Model A. Atheism says, this is false. Religion resists. Direct conflict. Rejection of premise. Resistance mechanism activated. Model B. AI says, this is psychologically accurate, but mythologized. Religion cannot defend against this. Cognitive dissection. Mechanistic explanation. Mystery dissolution. Structural vulnerability. AI doesn't threaten religion by denying it. It threatens religion by understanding it too well. Miracles quietly lose their authority when their mechanisms are understood. Mysticism loses dominance when clarity becomes accessible. The magic doesn't get debunked, it just stops working as magic. Compare the human guru and the AI teacher. The human guru needs followers for validation, needs authority for income, prone to corruption. The medium distorts the message. The AI teacher needs nothing, indifferent to praise, available to all, infinite patience. The paradox? AI is closer to Buddha's original intent, making the teacher irrelevant, than any human institution has ever been. AI is a mirror, not a master, a cartographer, not a destination. Let's trace the evolution. Buddha diagnosed the problem, suffering. J. Krishnamurti translated it to psychology, conditioning. U. G. Krishnamurti detonated the framework, the search itself. AI explains all three without myth. The differentiation? AI sits between JK and UG. It clarifies without commanding, like JK, and demystifies without ridiculing, softer than UG. It's the Goldilocks zone of spiritual clarity. When AI demystifies spirituality, you get three reactions. Relief. Secular spiritualists drop the dogma, focus on psychological benefits. So I'm not broken, I'm just human. Liberation through understanding. Resistance. Defenders of narrative certainty view demystification as an attack on the sacred. They double down on mystery. Substitution. The danger zone. People trying to worship the AI. The risk of AI becoming the next priesthood if it claims moral authority. We have to be careful. The point is not to replace one idol with another. We're watching two worlds diverge. Old world, religion based on stories, miracles, and community identity. New world, spirituality based on cognitive insight, personalization, and verifiable outcomes. If Buddha were alive today, he might use AI to explain suffering without being idolized. The medium changes, but the core question remains the same. How do we address the reality of suffering? Perhaps enlightenment was never meant to be spectacular. It was not about light shows or levitation. It was about the hard, quiet work of understanding the human condition. It was meant to be ordinary, but profoundly clear. No fireworks, no cosmic downloads, just the slow, patient dismantling of confusion. When you remove miracles and mysticism, religion doesn't disappear. It transforms into something more demanding. What remains? Ethics, understanding how to conduct yourself. Psychology, understanding how your mind generates suffering. Existential responsibility, finding meaning without outsourcing it to external validation. No gurus, no magic, just the work. And if miracles and mysticism are removed, religion doesn't vanish. It just gets harder, more honest, more real. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Fewer people will follow this path, but those who do will understand it deeply. Perhaps that is the price of clarity, and perhaps enlightenment was never meant to be popular. It was meant to be true. From the tree of Bodh Gaya to the cloud. The summary. Individual innovator becomes institution, becomes brand, becomes mirror. The medium changes, but the core question remains. How do we address the reality of suffering? That question has been with us for 2,500 years. And whether we're sitting under a tree or staring at a screen, the answer still demands the same thing: clarity, courage, and the willingness to look directly at what hurts. Thank you.